Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller has tested positive for another banned substance. It's hard to believe almost, but in some respect, because it is Pharmacy Miller, not hard to believe. So failing a drugs test ahead of what would have been a July 9th fight against Jerry Forrest on ESPN in Las Vegas. This was going to be his first fight back since popping dirty for 3 substances ahead of what would have been a scheduled Anthony Joshua fight. So the guy clearly can't help himself. So the substance reportedly GW1516, which aids fat burning and endurance. And it was also the same substance that was in his system ahead of what would have been that Joshua fight. So Jarrell Miller, who only recently just signed to Top Rank, has just blown up his career again. And I'll come to a few thoughts on the what next for Miller, because some of the whole him trying to walk back what happened a year or so ago, he's been doing that recently during the lockdown, trying to make out it was other people's fault, that he was listening to other people, yada yada yada. But clearly the guy just can't help himself. But getting to a couple of quotes here. So this, you can see here on screen, this was the tweet from Mike Coppinger breaking the news of the failed test. But then you have Top Rank Vice President Carl Moretti on Jarrell Miller. This is an Athletic quote. "We are aware of the situation. He will be placed on a temporary suspension by the Nevada State Athletic Commission on Monday morning. We are currently filling the main event for July 9th. And then Lou DiBella, who promotes Jerry Forrest, he is quoted as saying, "In this mind, it's a third strike. I knew Jarrell since he was a kid, but this is to the point of disrespect for the sport, disrespect for the opponent. This is crazy." And I think many people will echo the sentiment of Lou DiBella there. And we'll come to this Jerry Forrest date on July the 9th in a moment, because obviously they will want to save that event. It looks like they can. But I just want to first focus on Jarrell Miller. It's not the first time, it's not the second time, this is the third time. Earlier in his career, he popped for a substance. He claimed it was from a pre-workout, and that sort of, at that point in his career, he was relatively unknown. He did, sort of feign ignorance at that point. But a year ago, those 3 substances in his system proved he was a cheat. Just flat out cheat. And at the time, 2 of them were quite, serious substances that had to be injected. HGH and EPO, which he claimed were in his system because he had a medical procedure on an elbow injury. But the thing is, the GW1516 from a year ago, and I've pointed this out in numerous videos, but it seems to be lost in the shuffle, he never was able to account for that. Even when he sort of did his first big sit down in June 2019 with IFL TV, he just sort of glossed over that. How did that get in his system? The whole sort of, 6 weeks to come up with an excuse for an elbow injury to have these other substances injected into his system still never accounted for the GW1516. So Jarrell Miller is clearly aware of what he's doing, what he's taking, and he's just obviously got whatever wrong here and has failed a drugs test. He obviously hasn't timed whatever was happening with what he was putting into his system, because these guys, can often microdose because they can't test you between 11 p.m. and 7 in the morning. So often, this is what we're told, led to believe people are taking micro amounts that are out of their system by the morning. So Jarrell Miller, has he been doing that? Well, we don't know, but clearly he's been doing something. For those 3 failed tests from a year ago, he tried to walk it back. Originally, you may recall, he said that he was sorry, that he made mistakes. But in the recent lockdown, he's tried to walk it all back. He's tried to feign ignorance and sort of say, look, I put faith and trust in others. I didn't really know what was going into my system. But in other places, he's been saying VADA was aware of what was going on. Look, it's just a big pile and a crock of crap. Jarrell Miller is a flat out cheat. He knew he was coming back. He was trying to distance himself from what had happened. And obviously signing a new promotional deal, it was a fresh start. So it was easy to blame others and make out that it was someone else's fault other than his own. But with another substance in his system, found in his system, we just got to say categorically, the guy's just a cheat and he's got no place in the sport. When Lou DiBella is saying that this is to the point of disrespect for the sport, disrespect for the opponent, this is crazy, he's absolutely right. Miller was riding, a fine line. He was on thin ice to begin with, and then fails another test. I'm sure that within the language of whatever contract he's got with Top Rank, he's probably actually going to be out on his air here, that he's not going to be part of them. And he was the one that was trying to cozy up to any promoter that would take him, and clearly probably for decent money too. But he's just messed it up again. And I hope he is out in the wilderness now for good. Because, it's not one strike, two strikes, it's 3 strikes. And you have to question his whole career if he's just been doping the whole time. And that's a suspicion a lot of fight fans have. But this guy has patently proven, again, he's just a cheat. Big Pharmacy Miller lives on. The guy just can't come in clean. He probably knew that without the drugs, he wasn't going to be nearly the same fighter. And that's what many of us have suspected. A guy who was 300 plus pounds, piling forward, throwing the most punches in the heavyweight division, albeit not all of them are massive, strong shots, but still, the Energizer Bunny, people just couldn't believe how he was able to do it round after round. We know he's been on some stuff, clearly, because he's popped again 3 times, 3 strikes. I think he should be out. And one thing to take into account here is that Miller has a boxing license in Las Vegas. He had to get one for this fight for Jerry Forrest. Whereas with the situation with Joshua from 2019, his license had lapsed. He hadn't reapplied for it. That was something he was going to do ahead of the fight because he obviously had to get licensed to fight back then. So the commission, the New York commission, couldn't sanction him because technically he wasn't part of the system. But he is for this one. So it is in the purview of the Nevada State Athletic Commission to punish him. And I hope they do, and I hope they come down on him, and I hope the circumstances from a year ago, and there's also other failed tests, I hope it all comes into play and that they hand him a big fat ban. A couple years at least. I think after everything that's happened, and this guy clearly just can't stay away from the performance-enhancing drugs, he needs to have the book thrown at him. There is no place in the sport for him. And I know there were a lot of people, or some people at least, who were willing to give this guy another chance. And when you talked about his previous situation, people would say, oh, you're being too hard on him. Everyone deserves a second chance. He'd already had a second chance by then. This was a third chance. And he's obviously, through his own stupidity, messed it up again. The guy deserves to be gone for the sport. I got no time for Big Pharmacy Miller. He can get out and, I don't care what he ends up doing, and I don't care what he has to say. And clearly he's aware of what is going to be a backlash here. He's disabled his Instagram. I can't find it. So that means he must have deactivated it. I did have a check on his Twitter, but he hasn't used that for, a year or something like that. So clearly that's not a platform he's using, but his Instagram, which he's on basically every day, has not posted to. So he knows that it's coming. And I hope we're not going to get some, I will be vindicated type statement again, which was the line he initially tried to run a year ago. People are wise to it. This guy has been cheating, flat out cheating. No place in the sport. But just on to this July 9th date. So Dan Rafael of, I was going to say ESPN, but he's not with them anymore. He's a bit of a free agent. He has tweeted that Lou DiBella has told him that his fighter Jerry Forrest and Carlos Takam have agreed to fight July 9th on ESPN, and that they are working out the details. Takam will replace Jarrell Miller, who was bounced for failing yet another drug test. #boxing. Carlos Takam, as we know, always in shape. I actually think that's going to be quite an interesting fight, Jerry Forrest and Carlos Takam, because Takam is quite a bit faded from his prime. He was going to be a tune-up fight of sorts for Jarrell Miller. Miller should have got through that, and obviously if he was on stuff, he was clearly going to have an advantage over Takam. But Forrest is a good boxer, a good mover, and Carlos Takam has struggled with movers. We've seen that before. Against Senad Gashi, he looked dreadful. So if Forrest can give him some movement and make it difficult for him, I think I could actually see Forrest winning that fight, or at least having a good chance of doing so. So it's good to see that that date, that headline event for that Top Rank card is going to be saved. Carlos Takam is always in shape, so he doesn't have to get ready. He stays ready. He's going to take over that date, probably get a decent little payday. and it'll be an interesting fight. Maybe a more competitive and evenly matched fight than the Miller and Forrest one. But this whole situation with Miller, oh my God, I mean, it's hard to believe in some sense that this guy's had another chance. He signed to this promotional deal. He's tried to walk back all his previous stuff and place the blame at the feet of others. Say basically he had no clue what was going on, didn't know what was going into his system, that he was a bit ignorant to it and made mistakes, yada, yada, yada. It's just all a crock. The guy's a cheat. Cheat, cheat, cheat. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.